The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the rugged landscape of the frontier. Endless stretches of golden grass swayed gently in the warm breeze, while jagged mountains loomed in the distance, their peaks dusted with snow. This was a land of beauty and brutality where nature thrived and yet posed constant challenges to those brave enough to venture into its depths. Wagon trains stretched like ribbons through this wild terrain, carrying pioneers eager for new beginnings. The sound of creaking wheels echoed as families traveled together, hoping to find a piece of land where they could build a life. However, every journey was fraught with danger. The vast expanse of wilderness held secrets and perils that could turn dreams into nightmares in an instant. Among these intrepid travelers was Caleb Hart, a young scout whose heart thrummed with excitement for adventure. Having grown up on tales of the frontier, he learned from an early age how to read the land like an open book. Caleb understood its rhythms, the way shadows danced at dusk, and how the call of coyotes signaled the approach of nightfall. His skills made him invaluable to any wagon train daring enough to cross into unknown territories. But even Caleb knew that the frontier was not a place for the faint-hearted. With each mile they traveled, they faced treacherous conditions, unexpected storms that turned paths into muddy rivers, rocky cliffs that seemed to rise from nowhere, and animals whose wild instincts could threaten lives. Most unsettling were the packs of wolves that roamed under the cover of darkness, hungry and cunning. Many travelers whispered tales around campfires about encounters with these ferocious creatures. As Caleb rode ahead of the wagon train on his sturdy horse, he kept watch over the group behind him. He admired their resolve but also felt apprehension for everyone's safety. It wasn't just nature they had to fear, uncertainty hung heavy in the air as well. Illness, injury, or even a misstep could spell disaster for any family trying to survive out there. The restfulness of evening settled over them as shades of orange transformed into deep indigo above. Stars began to twinkle like diamonds strewn across dark velvet, a beautiful but deceptive scene in such an unforgiving land. Suddenly, against the serene backdrop, there came a disturbing sound. The chilling howl of wolves broke through the stillness. Caleb's heart raced as he instinctively tightened his grip on his reins. His instincts kicked in. He knew he had to remain alert for any signs of danger approaching his companions. Suddenly aware that Clara Benson had lagged behind during their last stop to gather firewood near her family's wagon, he felt a surge of concern wash over him. With urgency surging through him, Caleb decided he couldn't let anything happen to her out here in this wild place alone, especially not now when darkness threatened to envelop them entirely. The stakes were high. Not only was it Clara who needed protection from potential wolf attacks, but also the very spirit and hope carried by all those seeking refuge on this journey westward. With determination fueling his spirit, Caleb set off toward Clara's last known location as twilight settled ominously around them. A lone figure determined to guard our future against both beastly threats and human doubt alike. Caleb Hart was not just any ordinary scout. He was a beacon of hope for those who traveled the unforgiving trails of the West. With tousled dark hair and piercing blue eyes that mirrored the sky above, he embodied the spirit of adventure that thrived on the frontier. At just 18 years old, he had already earned a reputation for bravery and quick thinking, attributes that were vital when navigating the vast wilderness teeming with both beauty and danger. Growing up listening to the stories of pioneers who dared to brave the unknown, Caleb was fueled by an insatiable curiosity. His father, a seasoned frontiersman, taught him how to track animals, find fresh water, and identify edible plants. Caleb absorbed every lesson like a sponge, developing skills that would one day save lives. He wasn't just well-versed in survival, he had an innate understanding of the land itself, as if it whispered its secrets to him in moments of stillness. As a scout for wagon trains, Caleb's role extended beyond mere navigation. He was entrusted with scouting ahead to assess the land for safe passage and potential dangers. In his mind, each journey was not only about moving forward but also about ensuring that every family could reach its destination without harm. With a keen eye for detail and an acute awareness of his surroundings, he could spot signs of trouble from afar, whether it be a flash of movement in the underbrush or a shift in the wind that signaled an approaching storm. Caleb often led the way on horseback, his trusted steed Thunder galloping ahead with ease over rocky terrain. As they rode together through meadows or along steep declines, he felt an exhilarating sense of freedom mixed with responsibility. The weight of his companion's hopes rested on his young shoulders, but he embraced it wholeheartedly. Despite his youth, there was something wise about Caleb's demeanor. He had seen enough hardship on the trail to understand that danger often lurked where least expected. Bandits were one concern, wild animals were another. The presence of wolves was particularly unsettling in this untamed landscape. They were cunning hunters capable of striking fear into even the bravest hearts. Caleb knew that facing these challenges required more than just skill. It demanded unwavering courage and loyalty to those around him. Whether it was guiding families through treacherous mountain passes or calming frightened children during stormy nights, he approached each task with determination. But perhaps what set Caleb apart most was his connection with people. He listened to their fears and shared their dreams, understanding that this journey westward represented much more than reaching new land. It symbolized hope for a brighter future. His empathy endeared him not only to fellow travelers but also made him fiercely protective over Clara Benson after realizing she had fallen behind. As twilight deepened around them and shadows lengthened across the landscape, Caleb felt a sense of urgency rise within him again, a reminder that even scouts like him could never fully predict what lay ahead in this wild frontier. It reaffirmed his belief in himself. With heart and resilience guiding his actions, he would do everything in his power to safeguard Clara and everyone else through whatever challenges awaited them in this unforgiving terrain. Clara Benson was no ordinary pioneer. With her fiery red hair pulled back in a practical braid and determined green eyes that sparkled with a fierce spirit, she had always been known for her strong will. Growing up in a family of settlers, Clara was raised with the belief that strength and resilience were as vital as food and water on the frontier. The few small comforts of home had never dulled her fierce ambition to face whatever lay ahead, but as night began to cloak the landscape, doubt crept into her mind. The wagon train had been moving for weeks through the harsh terrain, and although Clara thrived on adventure, being left behind was a fear she couldn't shake. Just minutes earlier, she had been searching for firewood nearby when a sudden commotion erupted among the travelers packing up to leave. Clara had thought there was still time. She'd only turned her back for a moment. But when she returned to where the wagon train had been, it was already rumbling into the distance, dust rising behind it like angry spirits. Panic washed over her as the reality of solitude set in. She stood among tall grasses that swayed softly in the breeze, feeling as if she were caught in a dream, a nightmare where nothing made sense anymore. The vast wilderness no longer felt like an adventurous playground but rather an endless sea of uncertainty. Cold fear gripped her heart as she took in her surroundings. The shadows from ancient trees loomed larger than life as twilight faded and darkness took hold. Calmness was essential out here, but how could anyone remain calm when tales of wolves echoed in every traveler's cautionary stories? Clara remembered how men spoke of their eerie howls at dusk, prowling through the underbrush like sneaky phantoms searching for vulnerable prey. The thought sent shivers down her spine. She scanned the darkening landscape and imagined pairs of glowing yellow eyes watching from places she couldn't see. "Stay composed," she whispered to herself, struggling against rising panic. "You can find your way." Fear could easily cloud judgment, yet Clara knew all too well that being strong meant facing adversity head-on. With steely determination, she took stock of what she possessed: a small basket with leftover bread from dinner, a knife that had once belonged to her father, and a great deal of grit. She realized sitting still wouldn't serve her well. Huddling alone would only draw attention that she desperately wanted to avoid. So with resolve shining brightly within her soul, Clara decided to start moving toward where she last saw the wagon train depart, a glimmering dream that now felt impossibly far away. As footsteps crunched lightly beneath her boots and each rustle grew louder in the darkening woods, thoughts raced through Clara's mind. About Caleb Hart and how he always seemed steady even when chaos surrounded him. About their shared hopes and dreams discussed around campfires. About everyone they would reunite with even as uncertainty loomed large. Each step echoed fears but also fueled courage, leading not just toward survival, but igniting an unwavering spirit ready to face whatever lay hidden within this daunting wilderness, waiting for its final embrace. Little did she know that her strength would soon be tested in ways beyond anything she'd ever experienced before. The shadows were drawing closer while hope flickered dimly on the horizon ahead. The night air was thick with tension as shadows danced around Caleb's modest cabin, the sounds of the wilderness eerily quiet. The fire crackled softly, casting flickering light across the room where Clara sat, her heart racing at the thought of what lurked outside. Caleb had just warned her to keep close, instructing her to stay by the window while he kept a watchful eye on the darkening landscape. Suddenly, a chilling howl echoed through the trees, causing Clara's blood to run cold. The sound was soon joined by a chorus of growls and yips, a pack of wolves emerging from the depths of the forest, their eyes glinting like tiny lanterns in the darkness. Caleb's expression turned serious. He had encountered these creatures before and knew all too well what they were capable of when hunger drove them to hunt. "Stay low and quiet," he whispered urgently, grabbing his rifle from its resting place near the door. "I'll be right back." With that, he slipped out into the night, determined to protect Clara and himself from the looming threat. As Caleb stepped outside, he could see the outlines of the wolves moving closer, their silhouettes framed against the backdrop of a starless sky. He counted at least 6 of them, their sharp teeth glinting in the low light. He quickly assessed his surroundings, searching for anything he could use to fend off the hungry pack. His instincts kicked in as he noticed a pile of old crates stacked nearby. In moments, he had dragged one over to create a makeshift barrier around the cabin. He knew that wolves would try to attack from multiple angles, so he positioned himself strategically, ready to defend both the front and rear entrances. With a deep breath, Caleb raised his rifle, aiming carefully as the lead wolf approached. The creature paused, studying him with intelligent eyes that seemed to gauge their chances. With a loud crack, he fired a shot into the air, a warning meant more for the pack than an actual attempt to hit its leader. The sound echoed through the silent night, causing the wolves to hesitate momentarily. But then the instinctive call of hunger took over. They lunged forward together, their instincts driving them to attack. Caleb fired again, this time hitting one of the wolves squarely in the side. A yelp pierced the air as it fell back, but before Caleb could catch his breath, the rest of the pack surged forward. Caleb was quick on his feet, dodging their attacks while reloading his rifle with determined precision. He yelled to Clara from across the cabin, urging her to stay inside and stay safe while he battled their ravenous foes. She watched in horror as he fought valiantly against nature's feral predators. With each gunshot fired and each wolf fended off with tactical movements, Caleb displayed not just bravery but remarkable resourcefulness. He grabbed a lantern from a nearby table and threw it toward the ground as one wolf lunged at him. The glass shattered, fire igniting instantly as flames licked at the air, creating an immediate barrier between him and the remaining wolves. The fiery light startled some of them and caused others to retreat into the darkness. Caleb seized this opportunity to re-enter the cabin and shut the door behind him, locking it tightly as Clara looked at him wide-eyed. "Are you okay?" she asked through trembling lips. "I am," he replied, panting heavily but relieved that they were momentarily safe. "We'll hold out until dawn." As they braced themselves against what still lurked outside, both felt an unspoken bond strengthen between them, a shared understanding that they would face whatever came next together. The dawn broke with a stunning array of colors, the landscape bathed in soft light as Caleb and Clara cautiously emerged from the cabin. The danger of the wolf pack had passed, but a new threat loomed just beyond the horizon. As they stepped outside, they were met with the sight of Clara's wagon train returning, their horses moving sternly through the early morning mist. However, what should have been a moment of relief turned into a tense standoff. Clara's fellow travelers halted their horses at a distance, their eyes narrowed in suspicion. Whispers rippled through the group as they exchanged glances filled with uncertainty. Clara could feel their stares weighing down heavily upon her. She had been gone too long, and fear had fueled their imaginations. "Clara, are you all right?" called out one woman, her voice laced with concern but overshadowed by doubt. "I'm fine," Clara shouted back, her voice trembling between anger and vulnerability. "Caleb saved me from a pack of wolves." A murmur swept through the group as they shifted uneasily in their saddles. "Saved you? Or harmed you?" one man said sharply, eyes glaring at Caleb. "You were alone with him. How do we know he didn't mean to harm you?" Caleb stood beside Clara, his heart pounding as he realized that despite being her protector against wild beasts, he now faced suspicion from those he aimed to help. He felt anger bubbling up inside him. He had put himself at risk for her safety, and yet here they were questioning his motives. "Listen," he began, raising his hands in an attempt to calm the rising tension. "I was trying to protect Clara from danger. We fought off the wolves together." His tone was earnest as he recounted how desperately he had defended the cabin against the hungry pack. "We can't let fear lead us into misunderstandings." But instead of easing their concerns, Caleb's words only seemed to spark more distrust among them. The faces around him grew stern, fear often twisted into aggression when it came to protecting loved ones. Clara stepped forward, her frustration surfacing like a wild river breaking free from its dam. "I trust Caleb. He kept me safe when I was alone out here." Her strength radiated through her voice, firm and unwavering despite her earlier fears. "And how do we know you weren't in on it together? That you didn't plan this?" another voice challenged from within the crowd. The accusation hung thick in the air like smoke after a fire, a lingering suspicion that threatened to ignite further conflict among those who should have been united in purpose. Clara felt fury rise up again as she took note of how easily distrust could fester among those who claimed kinship on this hard journey westward. "I would never hurt anyone," Caleb declared fiercely, turning his gaze towards all present and holding it steady until their eyes met his. "All I wanted was to help." Silence followed for a moment before another voice piped up, a hushed whisper transforming into clarity among chaos. "Let's hear what she has to say," suggested an older man who had been observing quietly until now. Clara took a deep breath and shared everything, the terrifying moments spent battling wolves together and how Caleb's actions had saved her life rather than putting it at risk. As she spoke candidly about their harrowing experience and how they fought side by side against nature's fury, Caleb could see doubt begin to soften on some faces while others still wrestled with skepticism. It would take time for trust to be rebuilt after such immediate danger, but for now they stood united against fury. Hope flickering like candlelight amid rising awareness that both humans and nature posed challenges that could only be faced together on this treacherous frontier path ahead. The tension in the air grew thick as Clara and Caleb stood together outside the cabin, still processing the ordeal they had just survived. The morning mist began to lift, revealing a sun that seemed too bright for the uncertainty they felt. Just as Clara started to breathe a sigh of relief, a distant sound caught her attention, a rumble that grew louder and more urgent. From behind a line of trees, Clara's wagon train emerged, but this time they were not riding leisurely. The travelers looked furious and determined, their faces shadowed by hats pulled low and brows furrowed in anger. Caleb's heart sank as he recognized the sight of rifles slung over shoulders and grips tight around saddle horns. "Clara!" one man yelled, his voice laced with concern that quickly morphed into hostility as he spotted Caleb beside her. "What happened?" "We heard gunfire." The wagon train halted abruptly, dust swirling around them as they dismounted in unison. Clara's heart raced. She could feel the weight of their gazes settling upon her and Caleb like a heavy shroud. As the distance between them closed, Clara could see fear mingled with suspicion etched on every face. "We thought you were in danger," another woman shouted, her eyes darting between Clara and Caleb. "What did he do to you?" Caleb stepped forward, raising his hands defensively. "I saved her from wolves. You all need to listen." But his words fell flat against the mounting fury of the group. "You left the wagon train." "How do we know this isn't some trick?" a voice called out from behind the crowd. Their anger was palpable, fueled by worry and misunderstanding, transforming their initial concern into an accusatory front. Clara felt herself shaking as she watched them circle around them like wolves themselves. This time, it was her people who were ready to pounce. "Enough!" Clara shouted, stepping in front of Caleb as she faced her friends with determination etched into her features. "You don't understand. He didn't hurt me. He protected me." The lead man crossed his arms skeptically, taking a step closer to scrutinize Caleb. "How can we trust him? You were alone with him out here. He fought off a pack of wolves." Clara exclaimed, desperation creeping into her voice. "He saved my life." Caleb watched as Clara's words hung in the air, but doubt still flickered in their eyes like shadows dancing before a fire. He couldn't blame them. After all, they had only just endured the scare of losing someone to the wilds. "Do you think I would put myself at risk to harm Clara?" he asked firmly, his voice steady despite the chaos swirling around them. "I fought for her safety." The group shifted uncomfortably but did not move back. Tension tightened around them like a noose ready to snap. "Clara," one woman said softly, now looking at her friend with concern but still carrying doubt, "we need to know the truth." In that moment, Clara realized that words alone wouldn't mend the rift formed by fear. Action would be required to bridge this divide. Taking a deep breath, she stepped back slightly so everyone could see Caleb clearly. "He deserves a chance," she said confidently. "Let me tell you exactly what happened last night." As she began recounting their harrowing story, the sounds of howling wolves, Caleb's bravery in defending her, and how they worked together, she saw interest spark among some of her friends' eyes while others remained hesitant. The confrontation might not end peacefully, however, there was hope that understanding could break through their hardened hearts if given time. In this wild frontier where mistrust lingered easily among neighbors, it was essential to stand together against both nature's challenges and each other's fears. Clara took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her friends' gazes upon her like a heavy cloak. She cast a quick glance at Caleb, who stood beside her, his expression a mix of determination and concern. The moment had come. She needed to find the courage within herself to stand up for him, not just for his sake but for her own heart as well. "Listen to me," she called out forcefully, her voice carrying over the murmurs of confusion and doubt. "You all think you know what happened out there, but you don't. You weren't there. I was." Her fierce tone caught their attention, and some of the tension in their stances eased as they turned to face her fully. Clara stepped forward, her hands clenched into fists at her sides as she spoke with conviction. "I was left behind in the dark woods, scared and alone," she continued passionately. "It was Caleb who came looking for me. When wolves surrounded me, he didn't hesitate for a second to risk his life in order to save mine. He fought them off while I stayed inside that cabin." The group's expressions softened ever so slightly as they listened intently, drawn into her words like moths to a flame. Clara felt a surge of energy as she recounted how Caleb had armed himself with nothing but bravery and quick thinking during their terrifying encounter with the pack. "He didn't just protect me from danger. He showed me what real courage looks like," Clara declared, her heart racing. "While I panicked inside that cabin, it was Caleb who stood firm against those creatures until daylight." A hushed silence fell over the crowd as she paused for a moment to let her words sink in. She scanned their faces, recognizing the flickers of doubt slowly fading away as understanding began to take root. "He kept me safe when I was vulnerable," she went on, allowing vulnerability to seep into her voice now. "I trust him more than anyone else out here because he proved that his heart is good when it matters most." Caleb shifted slightly next to Clara. He could feel gratitude blossoming in his chest just hearing her speak on his behalf. Their bond had grown stronger through this harrowing experience, a connection forged by survival in the face of overwhelming fear. One voice broke through the silence, this time softer. "Do you really believe he won't hurt you?" "Yes," Clara replied firmly, locking eyes with the speaker. "I believe him because I saw who he truly is in those moments of danger. We were allies against something larger than ourselves." The mood began shifting. Skepticism still lingered in some faces, but hope started to spark among others. Clara could feel it. The possibility of healing wounds born from distrust was within reach if given time and honesty between them all. As she glanced back at Caleb and saw his encouraging smile directed solely at her, pride filled her chest. In standing up for him today, she had not only fought against another's perception but had also embraced her own truth. A truth rooted deep within that said bravery isn't just about physical fights. It's about recognizing strength within yourself and others even when darkness threatens. From beneath sunlit skies where angers threatened pounced like wild beasts themselves around them moments ago emerged something brighter. The beginning steps toward understanding one another amid struggles both human and natural that lay ahead on this untamed frontier path together. Clara's impassioned words hung in the air, each syllable piercing through the thick tension that had engulfed the wagon train members. As she spoke, the atmosphere began to shift. The skepticism in their eyes started to wane, replaced by a glimmer of understanding. Clara could sense the change as she looked around at her friends, their faces softening as they absorbed her testimony about Caleb's bravery. The lead man, who had been the loudest voice of doubt just moments earlier, frowned thoughtfully. "So you're saying he really fought those wolves to protect you?" His tone had shifted from accusation to incredulity. Clara nodded firmly. "Yes. It was terrifying, but he stood his ground against those beasts while I was sheltered inside," she insisted. "Caleb did not think of himself. He only thought of saving me." One by one, whispers began rippling through the crowd. Some travelers glanced at each other, reassessing their earlier judgments and acknowledging that Clara's description painted a different picture of Caleb than fear had led them to believe. "Maybe we were too quick to judge," murmured a woman whose brow had furrowed in concern before. She exchanged looks with several others who slowly began to nod in agreement. Caleb felt a flicker of hope ignite within him as he observed this transformation unfold around him. Their frozen expressions and rigid glares were gradually thawing. What had once felt like an impending confrontation began shifting towards something more promising. Clara continued passionately, her words like sparks igniting this fragile trust being rebuilt. "He helped me when I needed it most. I saw his courage firsthand. He is a hero." As she spoke these final words, Clara's heart felt lighter, buoyed by a potent mix of courage and recognition that sometimes even darkness could lead to flickers of light. The murmuring grew louder now, half-hearted assessments giving way to varied opinions as several people exchanged thoughtful looks. "If he saved you, then perhaps our fears have led us astray." Another voice piped up from the back, filled with compassion rather than suspicion. The lead man stepped forward again, his posture less threatening as he scrutinized Caleb more closely this time. "If Clara trusts you," he said slowly, "then maybe we should too." He paused before adding earnestly, "We must ensure we learn from this experience and not allow fear to blind us again." A sense of relief washed over Caleb at those words, and hopeful murmurs filled the air. The wall that anger had built began to crumble before his eyes, allowing light and warmth to flow back into their shared space. Feeling buoyed by this unexpected shift in sentiment, Clara turned to Caleb and met his gaze with pride lighting up her features. In those moments spent fighting against an external threat and now facing doubt together, they had forged an unbreakable bond. A partnership formed not just from survival, but from mutual respect. The group finally converged around them. Curiosity replaced suspicion as they collectively began understanding that both fear and trust needed careful navigation on this wild frontier path ahead. With newfound unity budding among them, it was clear they could begin healing side by side as allies, not only against nature's threats but also against their own doubts. In standing for truth and compassion amid darkness moments ago, Clara had initiated a profound turn of events that now cast light onto what could blossom from cooperation. It reminded them all that when faced with challenges, human and natural alike, solidarity among neighbors would prove far stronger than suspicion ever could be. As the murmurs of understanding spread through the gathering, Clara felt a palpable shift in the atmosphere. The tension that once threatened to erupt into conflict began to dissipate, replaced by an emerging sense of cooperation and hope. She could see that her fellow travelers were starting to reconsider their initial judgments and misconceptions about Caleb. Caleb, still standing beside Clara, glanced around at the changing expressions among the group. Though some hesitation lingered, he sensed an opportunity to foster real connections and bridge the gap that had formed between him and Clara's friends. This was a moment not just for survival, but for forging lasting peace. "Thank you all for listening," Caleb said, his voice steady and sincere as he stepped forward slightly. "I know your fears were rooted in love, wanting to protect Clara and each other from harm. I felt that fear too, which is why I acted the way I did." The wagon train members exchanged glances with one another as they absorbed his words. Some nodded slowly as they recognized the sincerity behind his intentions. Clara felt a surge of pride swell within her. He was reaching out to them, eager to connect beyond their differences. "I don't want anyone to feel afraid of me," Caleb continued, looking directly at them with earnest eyes. "My goal has always been to help guide and protect those traveling this harsh land. I will do everything in my power to ensure the safety of everyone here." Clara stepped forward, her heart racing as she chimed in. "We all face dangers on this frontier, wild animals, bandits, and now our own fears of misunderstanding one another." Her words rang true in everyone's ears, invoking reflection amidst their earlier uncertainty. "We can't afford to let suspicion divide us when we should be united against common threats," Clara added fervently. "That night wasn't just about my survival, it was about both of ours. Caleb's bravery saved me. If we can trust one another now, we can build a community built on shared experiences." The lead man, who had previously shown so much doubt, came forward again, this time lowering his rifle and allowing a flicker of respect to cross his features. "You're right, Clara," he acknowledged thoughtfully. "We've seen what fear can do. It kept us from seeing Caleb for who he truly is." A murmur of agreement rippled through the gathered crowd as more voices joined in support of building unity rather than harboring mistrust. "Perhaps we need more scouts like you," said a woman with a soft smile now coloring her face. "You faced danger without flinching." Feeling emboldened by their acceptance slowly growing around him, Caleb smiled back gently at Clara before addressing everyone again. "I want to work together to ensure we look out for each other while traveling this unforgiving land," he proposed earnestly. One by one, hands began reaching out toward Caleb in gestures of solidarity. Some offered grips of friendship while others simply extended assurance against suspicion that had ruled too long. As Clara watched this ripple effect unfold before her eyes, the gathering that had once felt so hostile transformed into something warm with resolve. A new beginning dawned on the horizon for them all. Cooperation instead of conflict amid challenges yet untold. In finding strength through unity forged from shared stories, where fear gave way to trust. The wagon train became more than just a collection of individual travelers. They grew into a community ready to face whatever awaited them together on this arduous journey through life on the frontier ahead. As the sun began to set over the wide expanse of the frontier, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, a sense of peace enveloped the wagon train. Caleb and Clara stood side by side, watching as their fellow travelers resumed packing up their camp in a spirit of camaraderie that had blossomed from a seed of distrust. The tension that had once filled the air was replaced with laughter and conversations about shared experiences, stories that bound them together as a community. Clara felt a weight lift off her shoulders. Just hours earlier, she had feared for both her safety and Caleb's future among her friends. Now, they were no longer isolated individuals but rather a united group ready to face whatever challenges life on the frontier might throw at them. Trust had begun to weave its way into their relationships, stronger than any fear that had previously divided them. Caleb looked over at Clara, his heart swelling with gratitude not only for her bravery in speaking on his behalf but also for her unwavering spirit throughout their ordeal. "You were remarkable today," he said softly, pride glimmering in his eyes. "What you did out there, standing up for me, it truly changed everything." Clara smiled back, her cheeks flushed with warmth at his compliment. "We changed it together," she replied, realizing that this experience had solidified their bond in a way she hadn't imagined possible. The harrowing night they faced against the wolves had not only tested their courage but also laid the groundwork for resilience and trust among strangers. As dusk settled into night, Clara turned her gaze toward the flickering campfire where many gathered around to share stories of their pasts and dreams for the future. She felt invigorated by the potential that lay ahead. They were building something more than just survival. They were forging friendships rooted in understanding and support. Caleb joined her gaze at the fire, reflecting on how quickly things could change on the frontier. "It's incredible how fear can cloud our judgment," he remarked, remembering the hostility he'd faced only hours ago. "But in moments like these, we see that it takes just a few courageous souls to break down those walls." "Exactly," Clara agreed thoughtfully. "Trust is vital in times like this. Without it, we isolate ourselves when what we need most is connection." The warmth of those words settled between them like an unspoken promise. They would support one another through hardships and victories alike. Together they would navigate this unpredictable path ahead, the uncertain wilds of nature alongside the complex emotions of companionship. As stars began to twinkle overhead like diamonds scattered against velvet fabric, Clara felt an overwhelming sense of hope for what lay ahead. They still had many challenges to conquer on their journey westward, nature's ferocity and human vulnerability, but now they faced those obstacles hand in hand, fortified by trust. In this vast frontier where every sunrise brought new opportunities and threats alike, Caleb and Clara looked toward each new day with renewed optimism, knowing that together they could build not just safer journeys but also lasting bonds forged through intertwining paths. A community founded on trust amid struggle as they traversed life's ever-changing landscape together.